Hi, welcome to Virtual CB1A. This is Miss Rena, and for today's video discussion, we're going to continue our discussion on parent functions, and this time we will talk about one type of transcendental function. So, bakit isa lang? Based from my experience dun sa last na video discussion na ginawa natin, isang video lang magkakasama lahat ng algebraic functions. Sobrang haba niya, 40 minutes. Mahirap mag-record. And also, I think on your part, medyo boring manood ng isang video discussion na ganun kahaba. So, I decided to make an individual video for each function from this point forward. So, exponential functions, as I've said earlier, this is one type of transcendental function. So, let's recall the definition of transcendental functions. So, transcendental functions are functions which cannot be expressed algebraically. Now, for the parent function of an exponential function, this is given by f of x is equal to a raised to x. So, you can replace the base a with any other letter since variable lang naman to, as long as it is defined as a number greater than 1. So, your base a should always be greater than 1. Later on, we're going to examine the graph of an exponential function and then explain why a cannot be equal to 1. On your module, I also included the exponential function with base 10, 10 raised to x. Kasi i-discuss din natin later on yung common logarithm that is base 10. So, sinama ko na rin siya, 10 raised to x. And also, the natural logarithm will be discussed later on. So, kasama rin sa module nyo si base e raised to x. So, same approach pa rin tayo. We're going to show the graph. And then after that, we will discuss the properties for the function. So, alam na natin yung parent function niya. Lagay na natin yung graph. This time, para magkaroon tayo ng mas magandang view of the function, I will be using the Desmos online graphing calculator. Since hindi ko ma-project yung app ko from my phone. I think this is the easiest way for us to examine the graph of an exponential function. So, let's type in the parent function, f of x is equal to a raised to x. You will be given the option to add a slider. So, add tayo ng slider. So, see the black graph here. Ayan. Try natin palitan yung kulay kasi hindi masyadong visible eh. Wait lang. Black kasi yung ibinigay niya sa atin. I changed the color of the graph to green para mas visible. So, if you will take notice, if your a is equal to 1, you will end up with a linear function. And specifically, this is a constant function. A constant function with 1 as the constant. So, hindi na siya exponential function. So, ang itsura niya, teka. Generate tayo ng table. Ayan. So, kung magsaset tayo ng mga values for the exponent x, no matter what you substitute to the value of x, you will always end up with 1, no matter how large or small your exponent is. You will always end up with 1. So, mababiolate niya yung idea natin ng exponential functions. Mag-end up lang tayo with a constant function. So what if we increase the value of a? Sundin natin yung condition that it is greater than 1. So, kung greater than 1 siya, for example, hindi ko siya ma-edit individually, 1.8. Ayan. If 1.8, yung value natin, nawawala. For our base A, this is how your graph will look like. Ayan. Para siyang curve that rises from the left to the right. Lagay pa tayo ng isang exponential function. Sabi ko nga kanina, kahit anong base, okay lang. Gawin natin base B. Add ulit tayo ng slider. Ayoko ng black. Ayan, blue naman. So, let's set a number that is greater than 1.8 and then compare their graphs. So, overall, mukhang pareho lang yung graph nila. But, as you increase your base, your tail na nandun sa right side of the y-axis will get closer and closer to the y-axis. So, yan. Papalapit siya ng papalapit dun sa y-axis compared with the green graph with a lower base. So, if you increase your base, your tail na nandun sa right side of the y-axis will get closer and closer to the y-axis. Please take note of that. And what will happen to the tail na papunta naman dun sa left ng y-axis? So, mukhang papunta siya sa 0, di ba? But, let's look at it closer. Mag-pan in tayo. So, mukha siyang papadikit sa 0. Yes, papadikit siya sa 0. But, it will never approach 0. So, no matter how far you extend your tail, papunta dun sa negative infinity ng x, you will never get an output that is 0. If you will take notice, walang laman yung third quadrant natin. Walang bumaba ng value na y is equal to 0. So, wala tayong coordinate that has 0 as the y coordinate. So, dito, lagay na natin si domain and range based from our observation. So, for the domain, is it possible to use all the values in the set of real number? Yes. Walang problema kahit gamitin natin lahat ng value in the set of real numbers for the input. Kasi it will always give you a certain value, y. So, for the domain, it is still the set of real numbers. So, we have from negative infinity up to the positive infinity. But, pagdating sa range, ano yung mangyayari? So, sa range, sabi natin kanina, walang bumaba ng x-axis. Walang nagbigay sa atin ng output na y is equal to 0 at saka y is less than 0. So, for the range, we are going to start with 0, but 0 is not included. Any value close to 0 but not equal to 0, going to the positive infinity. Yan lang yung mga value na pwede mong makuha dun sa range. Okay? So, another thing that we have to focus on will be the inverse. What is the inverse of an exponential function? So from your advanced algebra, na-discuss na natin to before, the inverse of exponential functions will be the logarithmic function. So ano ang form, ano ang parent ng logarithmic function? So it is the logarithm of x with base a. Ayan yung inverse ni exponential function f of x is equal to a raised to x. And also on your module, I also included the inverses for f of x is equal to n raised to x and f of x is equal to e raised to x respectively. So, sulat na rin natin siya dito. So, the inverse of the exponential function with base 10 will be so the logarithm of x na lang. So, bakit logarithm of x na lang? Since common logarithm naman siya, if your base is 10, hindi na natin siya sinusulat. But if you want to write here 10, wala namang problema. Pag nagsulat kayo nun sa mga right view na calculator, you will still end up with the same answer. Now, let's talk about e raised to x naman. Natural logarithm naman yung inverse niya. We have f of x is equal to ln x. So, ln is for natural logarithm. So, again, na-discuss na natin siya before from advanced algebra. You have to recall the lessons that we discussed nung nag-a-advanced algebra kayo. Now, punta naman tayo sa restriction. Are there any restrictions? Ang pinaka-restriction lang natin dito na define na natin kanina, A should not be less than 1 or equal to 1. Yun lang naman ang restriction natin. And and aside from that, wala na. So, A should be greater than 1. Yun lang yung restriction natin. Now, what is the general form of exponential functions? So, we have A raised to b times x minus h plus k. Ayan. So, this is the general form of our exponential function. And if we are talking about logarithms with base 10, so, syempre, there is a numerical coefficient a, and then meron tayo ditong base 10 raised to the power of b times x minus h, ayan, plus k. But the general form, if we are discussing exponential functions with base that is not equal to 10, ito yun. Okay? Alright. So, that will be it for our discussion of exponential functions. Next, we are going to focus on logarithmic functions. So, please wait for the next video. So, thank you and bye! Tapos